Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Do you hear me up there? The microphone is working? Good. Good morning. I see that most people are still finding their seats around, so I'll wait a few more seconds for you to sit down, and then we'll enjoy this session. Can we have the lights a little bit higher? I don't know if some, oh yeah, okay, a little bit higher again. Okay, this should be good enough. So we'll wait a few seconds for the gentleman to sit down. I'm sure that you will appreciate this. How are you doing today? You're good? Is this your first day at GIDS, or did you attend it also the other days, previous days? Who is here for the first day? Raise your hand. Oh, most people. Okay, good. Very good. I've been here since 2 days ago, and I already had another keynote, 2 other talks. I'm going to give this keynote now, another talk at 11:10 in Hall A. Unfortunately, it's just smaller than this place, so hopefully not everyone will come. Hopefully you already know about Java and AWS. And then tomorrow I have a workshop at 3 p.m., 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. It's a hands-on workshop on how to do stuff on AWS. So today, of course, this is a keynote, just 20 minutes. And I'm not going to do any demo here. But if you want to see the real stuff, tomorrow you should come back again, and we'll do it. Okay, I think we can start. We are starting with 2 minutes later than expected. So I will run it for, 3 minutes now. I'm trying to steal time from the organizers just to mess with them. Okay, good morning. So this is my second deck on all my slide decks. Do you know Seth Godin? Raise your hand if you know him. Some people know him. So Seth is a very nice person. I met him a couple of times. And he says that a presentation is not an obligation, but it's a privilege. And if you think about it, here we have about 372 people, roughly. I'm just trying to guess the number. And you are spending the next 20 minutes to listen to what I have to say. So I really hope that you will enjoy this and you will have fun while we go through these slides. So this is my name, Simone Brunozzi. This is a very difficult name to spell. So just make sure that you just call me Simon or Simone. That will be good enough. You can find me on Twitter. I'm Simon on Twitter. You can tweet about this today. Just remember to be nice because my boss is watching. So don't say bad things about me, okay? And of course, you'll find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, FriendFeed, Orkut, all the usual Flickr, all the usual social networking site. You can also download this presentation using this URL here. You know that bit.ly is one of the many URL shortener. Great Indian Developer Summit -5 is the shortcut for this presentation here. So maybe you want to write this down so you don't have to write down all the other things. So what's the plan for this next 18 minutes now? Introduction, perceptions, books, and then cloud computing, Amazon Web Services, and conclusions. So this is a keynote. So I figured out that for keynotes, it's way better to give some vision, some inspiration, rather than just throw technical details at you. So introduction, I live in Singapore. I moved in Singapore from Europe. I used to be the technology evangelist for Amazon Web Services in Europe, and now I'm covering Asia Pacific. I come from Italy. This is a nice picture of Florence. I used to live, let's say, nearby Florence. And I'm a technology evangelist. This is a nice picture I took with a colleague of mine in Iceland, actually. This was 2 years ago in Iceland. And I'm also a geek. I like these pictures, like this finger with these things painted on it. So most of you think of themselves as geeks. And when you mention geeks, it means that you're not just doing this because it's a job or because it's a way to earn money. You do it also because you like programming languages and information technology and this kind of stuff. And also learning a lot of things about India. And actually, I think that India and Italy have a lot of things in common. But this will be a too long conversation for today. So, perceptions. Perceptions are usually quite specific to every one of us. And I have an example here. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Starbucks. Starbucks is a famous coffee shop chain, an American coffee shop chain. So there's a common question that, when people discuss about Starbucks, they say, how many Starbucks are out there? And depending on if you're American, if you're Indian, if you're Italian, you might have very different answers. And for example, how many Starbucks in Manhattan? You see Starbucks in all American movies where, set up in New York City. How many in the US? How many worldwide? How many in India? And since the CEO of Starbucks, Howard Schultz, joined in 1982, then he had a trip to Milan. He saw the experience of having an espresso in Milan, which means you enter a bar, you say hello to the bartender, you say an espresso please, and after 20 seconds you have this smoking hot espresso, you sip it, and then you talk with other people. It's just a very nice experience. And he said, I want to use this to promote my Starbucks company, which was very small by that time. So how many in Italy then, if Italy was the inspiration for Starbucks? Well, if you ask Americans, they will say, well, worldwide, I think there are millions of Starbucks for sure. In Italy, of course, there should be Starbucks in Italy. And these are all perceptions. And I'm mentioning Americans here just because they are usually very wrong on these numbers. And in fact, Manhattan itself has more than 200 Starbucks, literally one for every corner, which means that all New Yorkers think, well, the world is full of Starbucks, and they think there are millions. And instead, there are just 11,000 in the US and just a little bit more than 5,000 in the rest of the world combined. In India, 0 yet. Italy, what would you guess? It's easy, 0, because in Italy we want this kind of espresso with this kind of cup, very dense. Now we go back to books and perception as well. So I would say everyone, read many books in his life, maybe tens, maybe hundreds, maybe thousands. And if we talk about Amazon.com, which is the company I represent, of course, you think, well, Amazon is famous for being a bookstore, right? This is how it became famous. How many of you buy things on Amazon? Raise your hand. Okay, it's about half the audience. For the rest of the audience, we have to talk in private later, okay? So anyway, Amazon is famous for being a retail company, but again, this is all about perceptions and maybe wrong perceptions, because this is not just about selling books or items, this is about technology. You are here today at the Great Indian Developer Summit in front of a technology evangelist from Amazon Web Services. And what's the link between a bookstore, online bookstore, and web services, cloud computing? What's the link? Well, the reason is technology. Amazon is successful also because technology is what drives our success. We run our own data centers. We have our own engineers that build the infrastructure, the platform, and the web services that run Amazon.com and now also the Amazon Web Services division. So, which brings us to cloud computing, which is a very, very common word today. How many of you know what cloud computing is? Raise your hand. Okay. I would guess like 80 people raised their hand, which means about 80 different definitions of cloud computing, for sure. I know this. I mean, every time I get asked, what's the definition? How do you define that? And I say, you know what? I don't give you definitions. And I think that it all goes to the why people should care about cloud computing. Why? Why you should be interested in yet another buzzword, as some people define it. Because there are some interesting thoughts around automation and around managing IT. This guy here, do you know this guy? Do you recognize this guy? Raise your hand if you know him. Jeff Bezos, right? He's the CEO and founder of Amazon.com. He's a billionaire, multi-billionaire, very rich guy. And a few years ago, he introduced this concept, the 70-30 switch. So if you think about your life, your everyday life as you work, most of you will experience that 70% of the time you spend on doing things that are not productive, things that don't really add value to your business. And 30% is when you create value. This is called the 70-30 switch. And Jeff Bezos says that if you are in a company and you want to compete in the global market, if you want to be successful, you have to think of a way to actually switch these two numbers and reduce your wasted activity to 30% maybe, and dedicate your 70% to useful and meaningful activities. And how you do this? Well, one of the ways to do this, since you are developers, is using something called cloud computing, which I'm not giving you a definition here, but I'm telling you why cloud computing changes the way you work. It's virtualized infrastructure and capacity. And because it's virtualized, you can easily use APIs to get on-demand capacity, storage, computing, content delivery, databases, all on demand. And this is a self-serve model in which you pay as you go. Same way you do with electricity, which is also called a utility business. And this is how the parallel with cloud computing is made. Most people say electricity is utility. So you plug, you use it, and when you're finished, you unplug, and you just pay for what you use, pay as you go. The same thing goes for cell phones. Thank you for shutting it down. And for cloud computing. You just launch instances, virtual servers, you use storage whenever you need to, and when you're finished, you can just shut things down. And when you do this, you stop paying for that. So it's a pay-as-you-go model. Virtualized, on-demand, scalable, and of course it's platform neutral. We don't want to tell you what kind of platform or what kind of language you want to run. We just want you to pick the one you already chosen. So in your case, I would guess Java. And this is maybe not so interesting for developers, but actually this graph here gives you some hints on why a scalable virtual infrastructure can really help doing a lot of things. I don't know why projectors also have problems, always have problems, but you will try to bear with me here. So this is capacity and time. If you have a traditional infrastructure, blue line here, your capacity stays constant over time, and then your prediction, which is this gray line here, says that in a few months, your capacity will not be enough. So what you do, you plan for a large investment, you buy new servers, new storage, and after all the hard work, this capacity will be in place, and then your capacity number will just be up like this. But in the real world, the actual demand for capacity is much more like the red line here. It's very variable because of workloads, different workloads, night. So capacity needs are like this, and the area between the blue line and the red line is basically unused capacity. So it's a waste of money. And second problem is, if you need to scale up very quickly, in most cases, you're not able to do so. If you run a web application, website, and then that website is featured on Slashdot or Dig.com, or maybe you're just very successful, that's what happened. Your capacity needs go up, but you're not able to cope with that need, which means you will lose customers and you will lose opportunities. And you solve this with a virtualized infrastructure that just follows your computing needs all the time. So basically, my suggestion would be you have to change your perception. You're all developers. Most of you are developers. Raise your hand if you're not a developer. Okay, just a few guys here. So most of you are software developers. But even if you usually focus just on the code and you usually don't care that much about the infrastructure and scaling things, actually there are two important things that you have to bear in mind. First of all, when you use cloud computing, of course, and you do the 30-70 switch, this applies to you as well. For example, if you're here in hall A at 11:10, I will give you some demos. There are videos, unfortunately, not live demos, but some demos on how to use the AWS Java toolkit for Eclipse to rapidly use AWS to deploy your applications or your software. And that's very interesting because when you do this, you as a developer are empowered with a new tool, with a new capacity that you didn't have before. And of course, this will allow you to focus on your value and what makes you, interesting and valuable. Let's talk about Amazon Web Services now for the remaining few minutes. This is a very, let's say, ugly list of Amazon Web Services. I hate lists. I hate bullet points. And this is probably one of my few bullet point slides ever. But if you look at these names here, most of them, of course, don't make sense for you yet. My suggestion would be go online. You're smart enough to find everything by yourself. But just to give you an example, for example, S3 is storage. You use API calls, REST or SOAP API calls. You upload files into Amazon S3. And that file is replicated multiple times across multiple data centers. Each one of these data centers is on different power grids, different floodplains, with multiple tier 1 bandwidth providers. Basically, your files are safe. And you don't have to care about, what happens if a disk breaks, if I have to, replace things. You don't worry. You just say, that file is stored, period. EC2, virtual servers. You launch a virtual server, different sizes available. You can choose Windows, Linux, OpenSolaris operating systems, and then you can run JBoss, Tomcat, whatever you want on top of it. And when you do this, you can set up an architecture of EC2 instances that auto-scale using monitoring information from CloudWatch, or load balance the traffic across your web servers using the Elastic Load Balancer. So you can have an automated architecture at your disposal. And this is something that most developers never had in the past. And if you have this, it means that your value and the effect you're going to have in your company or in your business is much higher. Of course, you can read more about all the other services, but think of them as building blocks. You can use one of them, none of them, or all of them together. And if you use them together, the combination of these services, of these Lego blocks, it's very powerful. So what's the cost to do this? You can say, well, this is very expensive maybe, so that's the other side of the coin. Not true. Few cents to run a machine per hour. Few cents to store a gigabyte per month. Few cents to transfer a gigabyte. And you don't have to worry about all the details of doing this. You just create your account, launch instances or store files, and you will just pay a few cents for each one of these things. So these are the advantages of using this infrastructure versus the traditional way of providing compute capacity for your applications. Greater flexibility, cost savings. Of course, it's easy to plan because you actually don't have to plan for capacity. You don't have to say, in 6 months, maybe I will need 20 servers, so you have to better buy them now. No, you just say, I need 20 servers now, API call, EC2 launch instance, 20 servers up and running in a few minutes. You are root, you are administrator on these machines, so you can basically do whatever you want. So you can scale these machines up and down. And what about security? Because most people say, I trust my own server under my desk. I don't really want to do things outside. Well, how you do it? Security, from this point of view, is a critical part, of course, and we make sure that the security level of this platform is the highest. And of course, performances can be very good because your infrastructure can scale accordingly to the needs of your application. So how to get started is very easy. You create an AWS account. You will need a credit or a debit card. And then you subscribe to the services that you want to use. For example, S3 or EC2, which are probably the most popular ones. In most cases, you have to download credentials, X509 certificates, key pairs, etc. And then you can start using the command line interface or the web console. And of course, if you need help, you can just refer to the forums where most questions are answered. This is a screenshot of the AWS console. You can pick your disk image, launch it, and it's up and running in no time. A few examples. This company, Animoto, a very simple web application that takes pictures and video together and creates, pictures and music together and creates videos. These videos have like nice transitions and effects based on music. They were using AWS, Amazon Web Services, since the beginning. And in April 2008, they had about 80 servers. Then they launched a Facebook application. This is what happened. 3,500 servers in 3 days. This was not possible before Amazon Web Services. Zynga, do you know Farmville, Mafia Wars, all these things? Zynga is the company that builds them, and actually they run 100% on AWS. And this is an example of scaling to more than 3 million daily active users in just a few days. What about Hungama, which is probably well known here in India? They run 80% on AWS. I'm not sure if you can read things because the projector is freaking out since the beginning. Maybe it doesn't love me, but we'll see why. Redbus, it's a Bangalore company. They run 100% on AWS. It's a nice website where you can book buses to go around all across India. So, conclusions. First of all, since most of you would think, well, would like to try them out, but how can I do it? Well, if you go here, write down this URL. It's a form. It's a feedback form. Very simple. You can put your name, optional, email, and feedback on how did you like the session, or how do you like AWS, or what's your idea, or what are your questions or suggestions. And if you give us your email, we'll use it just once to send you a $15 US credit code that you can use to test out AWS without the need to pay for that. So if you want to try it out and have $15 extra for free, you can just fill this form and give us your email. We will delete your email afterwards, so we will use it only to send you the credits. And of course, if you're here, Mr. Rick Harshman, this nice gentleman here in the audience, stand up, Rick. Rick is the regional sales manager for AWS in Asia Pacific. This is his email. So if you have nice questions, ask me. If you have tough questions, email Rick. So he will love this. And of course, we will be here around after this talk. We will just be here at this corner, or maybe upstairs if there is another person speaking. And if you need to ask us anything, we'll be more than happy to take questions. So conclusions. My suggestion will be, of course, this has been very short, and maybe the flicker of the projector was quite disturbing despite the nice visuals. But my suggestion would be, this is just the surface of a very interesting paradigm that is changing the IT industry today. And I think that as a developer, you have to be prepared and know what's going on and what's next. And then, of course, if you like it, if you think it's useful for you, use it. If you don't, of course, maybe a better time will come. So, namaste. Thank you very much. And hopefully you like this presentation. Thank you very much.